Hi everyone, and welcome back to Disc Golf Valley Tips and Tricks. For 2024, we're going through the courses one more time using the current disc packs that are available in the Pro Shop. We have picked up the Royal Strive pack, Tournament pack. I don't think it shows up here anymore. After you buy it, it goes away. But we want to pick up one more pack today as we're starting to enter some courses that have a little bit more challenge to them. It's a good idea to pick up a distance driver that has the big skip attribute. And in this season pass nostalgia, you get a nice Rive big skip as well as a Flow 11 speed with a roll attribute, an accurate roll 11 speed, which is, if you've been playing the game a little bit, it's kind of the equivalent of a 10 speed musket with a roll attribute. And that's going to really come in handy as we start working with some of the courses that are coming up. So that's a good pack to get, I think, and pop in your bag. Let's see what I've done in my bag. Yes, we have the Rive Big Skip in our bag now, the 3 Strive discs. A couple of the Tournament pack are still in our bag. We have the Flow disc and our Fuse. One other thing, yes, we do have a Pure disc in our putter pouch. And you might be wondering, well, how can I open up these bags? Well, we have been playing enough of the daily program that we have acquired enough coins to be able to open up some of these slots. And you might be wondering, well, how do I get more coins? There's a number of ways that you can do that. One is by playing the daily challenge here under the single tab daily challenge. You'll accumulate coins that way. There are ways to watch an ad and get points. Go to the daily deals, and here you see just by watching an ad you get 100 coins. There are also ways that you can acquire coins by meeting certain challenges that are sprinkled throughout the courses. If you go to that settings tab and go to badges, you'll see here that I've collected a few of these badges, and that has given me coins as well. So check out the badges and see if you can figure out what you need to do in order to get some of these badges. They give you some clues and hints, like if you want to tap on this one and see how I can get 1,000 coins, I can win 5 multiplayer rounds. And each one of these gives you a little bit of a hint. Going pro. Complete a pro tour and get rated 850 or higher, you'll get 1,000 points. So there's lots of ways that you can accumulate points, and that way you can open up more slots in your bag. All right, with those tips, let's get started today. Today we are going to do a practice run of, I believe it's Windswept Fields that we're up to. Yeah, we just did Lakeside, so Windswept Fields. And let's go. All right, Windswept Fields. This is a good course to practice to help you get a feel for what you need to do to work in high wind conditions. And this course has the strongest winds, the four-speed winds, but it's to help you get a feel for what kind of a hyzer or anhyzer you need to put on your throw in order to counteract the wind. So, for example, we see that the wind is very strong right to left here. So if we were going to use a backhand throw, we would probably want to put quite a strong anhyzer on that to counteract the strong wind. Another way that you can counteract that wind would be to switch to a forehand, and then the flow disc is going to naturally fade to the right. And you wouldn't have to put as much of an anhyzer on that, or a hyzer. It switches when you switch to backhand or forehand. So those are the different ways that you can counteract the wind direction and speed. And of course, the stronger the wind, the more you want to compensate. So let's go back and we'll check that wind is coming right to left. So with a forehand, we probably don't need to do much more than that, even with a 4-speed wind, because we're naturally going to fade. And that brings us up real nice to the basket. I find that when you putt, as we're calling it tossing in rather than throw in, that your disc is not affected as much in these strong winds. So if you're close enough to the basket in these strong winds, you might want to consider just tossing it with a putt rather than a throw. Let's replay it and see if we can't get a little different wind condition. Yeah, we're going 4-speed in the opposite direction now. So let's take our 11-speed again, and this time we'll leave it on backhand. I think maybe I'll also, here's another way that you can kind of counteract just where that disc is going to land. Kind of a third way of compensating is moving your pointer. So let's move our pointer this way some and put a little bit of a hyzer on that. Looks like with a little practice you might be able to ace that with the 11 speed, the flow disc. Maybe we should try practicing that a little bit. I think 13 meters I'm going to do a throw in, but we'll want to compensate a little bit. It's going to move a little bit with that 4-speed wind. So let's bring our pointer over just a little bit. And because it's a wind, we're going to bring it down a little bit as well, because it's going to move up just a little bit at 13 meters. And so here we go. We'll just do it one more time and show you that if you don't have the flow disc or a 10-speed or musket, you can do this hole just fine with the 7-speed. And it doesn't get you right up to the basket, but close enough that you can get your throw in for the birdie. All right, let's move on. Okay, here's where we can take advantage of our new Rive skip disc. And this hole with a nice skip disc does have the potential for getting an eagle. Let's see if we can pull it off. It's really important to take a look at the wind condition. I usually bring the pointer down quite a bit because the lower you are to the ground, the less your disc is going to be affected by the wind. And we're going to want to counteract that. But we know that this disc also fades to the left. So in this wind condition, we're not going to put too much of a hyzer on it because we know it's going to naturally fade. In a 3-speed, we should be fine. And with our fuse, let's come back. And there's two things we need to adjust for here, and that is the wind is at our back, so that's going to lift our disc up a little bit over 12 meters. But also we're shooting downhill. So I'm going to put my pointer just a little lower than normal, and I'm going to not pull it back as far as I normally would for 12 meters. And there it goes. Let's do it again. Oops, we didn't do it again. And here's a little tip too. If you want to practice any hole over and over again, just be sure and choose that hole, Windswept Fields, and we want to do 2. So now when we want to replay this hole over again and try different things in different wind conditions, when we hit restart now, it's always going to restart to hole number 2. So if you're struggling of what to do in a really strong forewind, maybe in the opposite direction, well, you can keep hitting restart until you get the wind direction that you're struggling with. Let's just go ahead and play this. When it's a 4-speed wind, again, you want to bring it down, and this time I'm going to put just a bit of an anhyzer on that, because that 4-speed wind is really going to affect the flight of our disc. Even then, I'm not too far off to the left. So let's rethrow that, and we get the same wind speed coming back. And so we can try just how much of an anhyzer do I need to put on that in order to be okay. Well, we're probably okay there, but it looks like we could do even more. And so let's try something like this. Goes way off to the right a little bit before it starts to come back with the wind and the natural fade. So that's a lot better. But I think we could even do more. There is a real difference between a 3-speed wind and a 4-speed wind. So keep that in mind. So we now have a 4-speed wind in the opposite direction, and so we're going to put an hyzer on it this time. Because we're working against that wind, it doesn't even make it up to the basket. With a 4-speed wind in that direction, I'll put my pointer right about here and hope for the best. With 32 meters, you want to come down just below that first line. There. For a nice eagle. Let's move on. Okay, hole number 3. And this is actually another hole where you can get an eagle most of the time when you have the right discs in your bag. The skip disc that you see here is just going to be too much disc. It's going to go skipping up the hill behind the basket, and we don't want that, so we're going to change it. This roll disc should work out fine. A roll disc normally just is good at going the distance but then sticking the landing. And because it's an extra glide strive, it should go the full distance, and in some wind conditions maybe overshoot the basket even. Let's give it a try. And what I usually do on this hole is take a look at the direction of the wind, and if it is left to right like it is right now, I'll choose to throw it with a backhand, and that way the strive is naturally going to fade to the left, and it's going to naturally work against that wind direction. But I'm still going to put a little bit of a hyzer on it too, because that is a really strong wind, the 4-speed wind. And that brings us up nicely to the basket, 16 meters. And when the wind is kind of at your back, it doesn't lift up your disc as much. So what I usually do is point it right to the top of the bottom rim. It is going to lift up some, so we wouldn't put it where we normally put it right in the center. We want to bring it down just a little bit because we know it's going to lift up some, and we see the direction of the wind is left to right, so we're going to make a little adjustment for that as well, because that disc is going to go off to our right. And let's see how we do. There we go. For an eagle. Okay, so our wind's going in the opposite direction this time, so I'm going to switch to a forehand. We'll still use our roll disc here, but we'll put our pointer somewhere around here because we don't want to end up in that pond. If you're not careful, the disc seems to want to always land in that pond. So be sure and avoid that. But we know this disc is naturally going to now fade to our right. But it is working against that wind. So maybe we'll add just a little bit of a hyzer on it. And that should bring us around nicely. Again, 17 meters this time, and this time we're going to point our disc more like down about here. A 4-speed is going to lift that up. And there we go, another eagle. So there you go, next hole. Our roll disc is going to work nicely here again. I'd put my pointer right about here and put quite a bit of a hyzer on it to counteract that wind. In fact, with that wind, we could even put our pointer over more. And when it hits this back hill, it usually just turns and slides down around, sometimes rolls right up to the basket. Let's see if we can get different wind. Let that wind bring it right around to hit that back hill. And this time the wind is in our face, so we'll bring it down just a bit more. But over 9 meters, it's not going to lift up that much, so don't make the mistake of bringing down too far, or you'll hit that bottom rim. In fact, in 9 meters, in this wind, I might just center it up. All right, so it's a fairly easy birdie, and I think we can move on. All right, in this wind condition, in this direction, why don't we try our windbreak disc? In theory, a windbreak attribute on a disc is supposed to go a little better in the strong winds. I'm going to put my pointer right about here, but given the wind is left to right, I'm going to put a little hyzer on it too, and see how that windbreak attribute cuts against the wind. And that brings us up for another eagle. You can see there's a lot of eagle potential on this course. Once you get used to working with the wind, you can do quite well on this course. This time the wind is going more right to left, and let's pick our windbreak disc again. That worked pretty good. But this time with a wind like that, your disc is going to naturally turn so much, fade so much to the left that it's going to end up in the river. And we don't want that. So I'm going to bring my pointer way over and not put too much of a hyzer on that at all. And let's see what happens. Yeah, into the river. And so let's do a rethrow on that, so we're working with the same wind conditions. Let's maybe switch to the strive disc that has the roll attribute and see if that won't stick the landing just a little better. Still in the river. Okay, so we can see that with these strive discs, we either need to move our pointer further this way, or put, rather than put just a little hyzer on it, put more of an anhyzer on it. Let's try half the disc. You see, this is the edge of the disc. We'll call this half a disc. Let's see where we land when we do that. That's more like what we want. So that we can come back for our two shot. So I would recommend setting up your practice mode so that it's going to Windswept Fields and starting with hole number 5 so that you can try different wind conditions and learn what you need to do with whatever disc that you have in your bag in these strong 4-speed winds, and just kind of memorize what you need to do to counteract these strong winds. So we learned something like about there, but even then put just half of an anhyzer on that. it comes around nice. To give you that wonderful eagle that everyone's talking about. All right, hole number 6. Now, the basket here is actually on the other side of that hill, so we need to go around it. The 5-speed that they gave me here is not really enough disc. Let's change that to the flow disc. The 7-speed, the Explorer, will actually get you around that hill enough to lay up fine. But the flow disc, because it's almost identical to the flight path of the musket roll disc, it allows you the potential of getting an ace on this hole. And when you have the possibility of getting an ace, I say why not try for it. So even though the 7 can lay you up, if you have a musket or this flow disc, let's see what we can do with that. Now, the next thing I usually do is take a look at the wind speed and direction. If it's a 3-speed wind in this going from left to right, then what I'll usually do is come over here, put my marker right up on that tree like that, and change it from backhand to forehand. And then put almost a half a hyzer on that. And try for that eagle. Doesn't happen often, but when you've got this roll disc, it usually sticks the landing nicely, so you're not sliding away from the basket too much. If you try extra glide disc, a 10-speed extra glide disc, or if this flow disc was an extra glide disc, that could go sliding a real distance away from the basket. All right, we've got the wind in a different direction this time. Let's go the other way, and what you want to do is try and land as close to that basket as possible, because you can lose a point coming back in these strong winds. It's sometimes a little difficult getting even these shorter putts in. All right, hole number 7. We've got a Mando situation going on here, and so we can't sneak around to the left of the tree. We have to go around the right of the tree. And let's try out this flow disc here as well, and see what we can do with it. That leaves us 12 meters. That's not too bad. Just made it over the top of that rim. Let's replay that. I think that we could also get away with our strive roll disc. Let's just put it up a little higher so that it goes up, loses some energy in the up flight, and boomerangs back to the basket. I think we could get a little closer than that. Let's try again. Yeah, that's a little better. But before you go for your 3 stars, I'd recommend spending some time on hole 6 and 7, because it can mess you up. You're getting close to the end of your game there, and you can blow it on these 2 holes, the 6 and 7. Next hole. Oh, and this one too. I would spend some time on this one too, because it's pretty easy to end up in that lake or go so far past the basket in these strong winds that it's hard to come back without also risking going into the lake. So this one really deserves some practice time. I believe that this flow disc will make it even on a forehand. So let's try that. Bring my pointer down to the edge of the pond. And Let's try pulling straight back. Well, I think we can do better than that. Let's try a rethrow. And this time, either let's bring it closer to the basket and put maybe just a little bit of a hyzer on that. This wind is going to take it off to the left. Yeah, that's a little closer. You can see that if you spend a little time on this, you might be able to use that flow disc to potentially get an ace here. But coming back can be a little tricky. You have to really kind of master these long putts with these 4-speed winds. Kind of takes some time getting used to. Let's try again. Let's put a forehand on this and... Ooh, close, but no cigar. We're not smoking any cigars. There's other approaches that you can try here. The Explorer works pretty good as well, and especially with a backhand in a strong wind condition like this, it'll probably even go too far. As predicted, 32 meters. Here's a tester shot. But it goes in for a birdie. But let's try that again. See if I can't get a little closer to the basket. Let's try the Explorer in this strong wind against us. See if it makes it. That wind really took it. Let's try it again and compensate a little more for that wind. I want it to just drop down into the basket. So that's a little riskier, but it's a nice toss in. So you can see you've got some things to explore there, and depending on the discs that you have in your pack, spend some time on that hole. All right, last hole. This hole, when I first started playing this course, I often overshot this basket and ended up in the lake on the other side of this little peninsula. And the reason is because I would think, 96 meters, I need to get an 8-speed or maybe a 7-speed would make it, but they would just be too much disc. And the real winner here is the 5-speed, and the fuse works, but almost any 5-speed will be the disc that you want. And I find the easiest to remember is straight pull downs, rather than trying to remember what you need to do with an anhyzer and hyzer in any given wind. I've just found it easier to memorize more where I need to put my pointer to counteract any wind. And so in this case, in that wind condition, to pull straight back, I put my pointer right about there and just let the wind bring it over to the basket. And that leaves us a nice distance to work with. And in this wind, I will probably put it over just a little bit more and maybe don't pull it quite all the way down. I have actually gotten aces with fuse, depending on the wind. All right, that does it for this video, Windswept Fields practice run, and hope you were able to pick up a few tips. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, and that way you'll get notified. And we'll see you next time here at Disc Golf Valley Tips and Tricks. So long for today.